Let's go ahead and style this code here using TailwindCSS instead of the current bundled styles. So if I look at the network tab here, CSS, I need a bit more room, I guess. Yeah, right here. So currently this CSS file here is loaded. And yeah, let's replace this, or maybe most of it, maybe not the animations, we'll see. Most of it with TailwindCSS, right? This is supposed to be a tutorial video after all, right? So we'll work on getting these transitions here going, and yeah, we'll just take it one step at a time. And full disclosure, this is probably the part I'm the least proficient with. So what I'm about to do maybe isn't the best way to do something, but I'm pretty sure I'll get it to work, right? So with this grain of salt, okay, so I've got the watcher running. I also want to start the Tailwind JIT compiler, and I'll use the npm prefix argument, so I'm able to run it from the Magento root directory here. I could also first change into the Tailwind directory, but I just want to give you different options, different ways to do things. So here we go. This should work. There we go. Okay. Good, so that's compiling, and now I guess the first thing to do is get rid of the CSS that is usually loaded here. So here's our original module, and I guess it's in here. Yes, so right here is where this resource is being loaded. So let me copy this. That's in a default XML file, so it's loaded on every page, this instruction. So what I want to do now is I want to add a layout XML file to our compatibility module and remove this resource again. Okay, let's go ahead and create a new file. I'll use my little file template for this inside of the layout directory. And I'll call the layout file Hoover_default instead of just default. So here, Hoover default, and originally it was just default. So what's the difference? The difference is that the Hoover_prefixed version of a layout XML file is loaded only if a Hoover theme is active on the front end. As a rule of thumb, in compatibility modules, you always want to use the Hoover_prefixed file names for layout files. Because that way a Luma store view and a Hoover store view can both exist on a instance of Magento, and the Hoover compatibility module doesn't influence the rendering of the Luma side, right? Because on the Luma side we still want the CSS to be loaded. All right. So but here in our Hoover default, so on every Hoover page, we want to remove the CSS, and so it's no longer loaded. By the way, this is documented, and Hoover underscore, there we go. And oh yeah, I think last time I recorded I still was using the old doc site. So yeah, we've got a new doc site. It's public now, the URL still is the same. Yeah, so here anyway, here you can read more about how this works. Good, so I reloaded, and yeah, everything kind of broken as expected. The CSS is no longer being applied. So let's go ahead and kind of fix this. All right, so here's the block PHTML class, and what have we got here? So here's our root component element. So these are the slides, and then below the slides we have the content for the slides, and then we have the navigation. So all of this is being rendered here. And we're seeing the second slide. So I think this means that probably both slides are being rendered, but probably they are positioned absolutely. So root container, and here we have the slides, yeah. So here I can see this class name absolute, being set on each slider item. That's, I don't remember if I said that earlier already, or if that might be some positioning class that was part of UIKit already. Anyway, absolute is a Tailwind CSS class, so it just works already. And what it does, it takes care that this element is positioned absolutely. So absolutely positioned elements always are in relation to the closest parent that is not the default positioning type, which I think is a static or something. So just to make this more formal, I think I want to set the position type relative here on the root component. So now this will be positioned absolutely in relationship to this root element, right? Just in case. Seemed to work already anyway, but okay. And you might have noticed I tend to leave the original classes in place. Sometimes it makes it easier to find what I'm working with and comparing the two, the original template and this one maybe. So at least to start with, I tend to leave the original classes and just add in the Tailwind classes as needed. Okay, so this shouldn't change anything, adding this relative. But I do want to confirm that this here is actually the slider container. So here we have for each loop down to here. So yeah, it renders one child div, and then this here is just mutating the .nav items variable and the slider counter. So this isn't rendered immediately. So I remember this class being used inside of the JavaScript too. Yeah, here in init, it defines the container by looking for an element UK slideshow and using that as the container. And then the slides are all the children of the container. All right, so that matches up. So this is our container element. And well, let's leave it for now. I don't know, we might have to add some slides later. But now I want to take care that only the first slide is visible here. If I remember correctly here, the slides were being hidden and shown using opacity. I think that happened in the transitions here. So somewhere right here, we had these animations, and here it always set the opacity to 1 on the next item and opacity to 0 on the current item. So I think the easiest thing to do would probably be to render this element with the matching opacity from the start. So how about we do this here? Opacity. So if we can use this slide counter property here to check if it's the first slide or not. So if it's the first slide, we want to render a opacity of 1, so that's 100%, and otherwise 0. All right. So now if I reload, the only thing that should change, I think, is that the first slide should no longer be covered up by the second one. Okay. Cool. Now let's maybe work a little bit on this content, right? This is what's happening here. Oh no, wrong. Didn't want to open this. I wanted to inspect this. There we go. Oh, so here we have the container. Here we have the 2 slider items, but I want to inspect the current slider because the other one is hidden anyway. Huh. All right, so here we have our content wrapper stuff. So that would correspond to this here. Okay, so we have the slider item, then we have an image wrapper which wraps the content too. Okay, so we have the picture element with the image, and then we have a slide URL. Funnily enough, that doesn't wrap the picture. It's like an element without any content. And then we have the content. Okay, so yeah, the link doesn't work at the moment here. Interesting. So I guess okay, so I could always style in the template here, reload, see the changes, but I want to show you a different way to do this. And I want to introduce you to a little tool, a browser plugin called DevTools for TailwindCSS. And let me switch to our Tailwind version 2. This is a browser plugin for all Chrome browsers, and it's a commercial product, but it's super useful. So I really recommend getting it. It's devtools4tailwind.com, because what it allows us to do is it gives us auto-completion for all Tailwind classes, and we can preview them immediately in the browser without having to always rebuild the style sheet. That happens automatically anyhow, right? It's going to be rebuilding our styles. But while I'm editing the source code in the browser, the JIT compiler here running on the server doesn't see that. So that's why it's useful to be able to do that right here. So I want to style this content here. How do you want to do the link first? Oh, let's style the content first. Okay, so what have we got here? So this is a flex box, and the content is somehow wrapped to the middle. You know what? First I want to move this into the middle, and then this here would apply to its content here. So maybe we can just make the whole item a flexbox too. I kind of enjoy working with flexbox. It's super easy once you get the hang of it, and it makes positioning things like in the center very easy. So I'll try that. So where is our first banner item? That's right here. So here I'll say flex. So no difference yet, I guess. And now I want to set the way that the children are positioned. So the actual items are positioned absolutely. So let's move. Let's move the content out. No, actually, I think it's probably better. Maybe we just position this absolutely here. Okay, different idea, different plan. Sorry, thinking while I'm writing code. So instead, what I want to do here is I'll get rid of this. I'll leave these two though. I'll say I want to position this content element absolutely, and I want to full width, full height. All right, so that would be here because we've got this little div in between here. All right, so then this was a flex box, right? So let's make this a flex box. And now I want to align the contents. And first of all, let's say I want to align them in the middle. So justify is used to align the contents in direction of the main axis of the flex box, right? So this is a flex row by default, so this would be the horizontal axis. And that's right here, all right. And now I want to align it horizontally, but that's weird. So why isn't this moving up yet? I want this over our picture. I thought absolute would take care of that. So what if I say top 0? Oops. Ah, there we go. Okay, good. So we have the justify center to align it on the horizontal axis. And now I want to align it on the vertical axis because the size should fit our, oh, it's actually too large, but only because we're pushing something down there still. Okay, so that would be items, I think. So items center. Yeah. Okay. That looks okay for now. There's one other thing I want to change. So in the content here that I built with Page Builder, so we have some styles that are being applied inline from Page Builder. But here's an H2, and here's some data content. And you know, there's no visual difference here. All of those styles get reset by Tailwind. So the usual way to fix this, so styles actually look like proper styles again, is by adding the for written content, that is, right, is to add the prose class. So where's our content wrapper? Here, and here we have this div, this data Tailwind selected thing. That's something that's added by the dev tools for Tailwind. We can ignore that. But so we don't have any classes right now. What I want to do now, though, is I want to add prose here to this class list. And now you can see we get some proper formatting again. Unfortunately, it pushes this little row above the darker content goat, so it's not really easy to see. But I won't fix that right now, because making overlays work well on slider backgrounds is always a pain, and that's up to the content creator. So at least now they're able to format the text if they want to, right? All right, so let's take these styles and paste them into our template. So I'll take the styles for the content wrapper here, paste them in here. All right, and then here we had prose. All right, now let's reload. See if I got all the classes I wanted to add. Oh, looks like the x-intersect thing isn't quite doing what we want first. So it only triggers the initialization code if we actually if the top of the banner is in the screen. So if I reload like this, okay. So it seems like the container size isn't set until the JavaScript is initialized, and so it has no size. These are positioned absolutely, the other elements, so they don't push down the other content. Then that's why it's overlays. So the content size, the container size is right here. All right, so this height, that's set by JavaScript, and that only happens if once the JavaScript is initialized, right? Yeah, so, and bam, there it is. Okay, we'll have to revisit that later. Good. Okay, so I guess that's not a bad start. Next, let's have a look at the navigation, so we can actually switch from one slide to the other.